right, we're set to go. Allison, take us away.
All right. Good morning and Happy New Year, all. I'd like to call to order the Mendocino County Planning Commission meeting for January 6, 2022 at 9:01 a.m. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Wiedemann.
Here.
Commissioner Pollan. Here. Commissioner Jones.
Present.
Commissioner Morris. Chair Purnell.
Here.
We have one.
Okay. The Mendocino County Planning Commission meetings will be conducted virtually and not available for in-person public participation pursuant to the provisions of Government Code Section 54953 and the recommendation of the Mendocino County Health Officer. Meetings are live streamed and available for viewing on the Mendocino County YouTube page at youtube.com/Mendocino County Video. In order to minimize the risk of exposure during this time of emergency, the public may participate digitally in the meetings by sending comments to pbscommissions@mendocinocounty.org or orally via telecomment in lieu of personal attendance. All public comment will be made available to the commissioners, staff, and the general public after processing by staff and can be viewed as attachments to this meeting agenda on the Planning Commission agenda page. To submit public comments via telecomment, the Zoom link and associated instructions can be found on the agenda for this meeting. In order to ensure you are called upon to provide comment, please complete the telecomment form found on the Planning and Building Services meeting agendas page. Okay. So moving on to agenda item 2, which is Planning Commission administration. We have agenda item 2A, discussion and possible action, including adoption of resolution of Mendocino County Planning Commission finding that state or local officials continue to recommend measures to promote social distancing in connection with public meetings. And with that, I'll turn it over to staff.
Sure. So this item, as you know, this has been where the Planning Commission about every 30 days needs to readopt a resolution allowing for continuation of virtual meetings. So that's the item in front of you today, and we would be looking for a motion and a second on that and any discussion that the commission wishes to have.
I'll move adoption.
I second the motion.
You?
Roll call vote. Commissioner Wiedemann.
Yes.
Commissioner Pollan.
Yes.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Chair Purnell.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good. Agenda item 2B, this is our annual election of officers, which is the chair and vice chair. And at this point, let's just see how commissioners would like to handle this.
Well, I'd love it if you both would continue to serve, but if you don't want to, I guess we could see if someone else wants to.
I would be happy to continue to serve. And you, Vice Chair Wiedemann?
Yes, I think it would make sense just because we're in such an odd time being, participating as a commission in Zoom. And I think it'd keep a continuity for us right now. And that makes sense.
Okay, so I'd like to move that Chair Purnell retains her position and Vice Chair Wiedemann retains her position as Vice Chair.
I would second that motion.
Roll call vote. Commissioner Pollan.
Yes.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes.
Chair Purnell.
Yes.
Commissioner Wiedemann.
Yes.
Chair and Vice Chair are selected.
Okay. Moving on to 2C, determination of legal notice.
And legal notice has been determined on all matters on this agenda.
Wonderful. And do we have a director's report this morning?
We do not. There will be one provided at the next meeting in January, but of course, I'm available for any questions you may have.
Any questions for staff from the commission? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to agenda item 4, matters from the public. This is public expression. Members of the public are welcome to address the Planning Commission on items not listed on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is prohibited by law from taking action on matters not on the agenda. Individuals wishing to address the Planning Commission under matters from the public may do so via email, telephone, or Zoom. For information on each of these methods, call Planning and Building at 707-234-6650 or visit them on the Planning and Building Services webpage under meeting agendas. All correspondence will be attached to the item and made available online on the Planning Commission agenda page. If any members of the public logged into Zoom and are wishing to speak under public expression and have not completed the telecomment form, please use the raise hand feature to allow staff to add you to the meeting. Instructions for using the raise hand feature are found on the agenda for this meeting. Do we have anybody wishing to speak under public expression this morning?
It
Yes,
does
we
appear we
do.
do, yeah.
Great, let's go to them at this time.
You want to time?
Oh, sure. So we're going to be bringing over Anna Marie Weibel here, and give me just a minute here. I can get a timer up and running. So sorry for the delay here. Get into my link. Find the right link. Here. Open. Sorry, my apologies. Was not ready yet to share my screen. All right, so we're going to go ahead and bring over Ms. Weibel, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Oops. And Ms. Weibel, please just state your name for the record, and once you begin speaking, I'll start your time.
Anne-Marie Weibel, I see 4 screens with 4 different times.
Yes,
So anyway, it's a little confusing, but my comments will be brief. I just want to bring to your attention that the resolution you just accepted, the date will need to be changed to 2022. In terms of the determination of legal notice in the past, these Planning Commission meetings were advertised in the Anderson Valley Advertiser. I didn't see a notice this time, and I wonder if this actually happened and when it was advertised. Maybe because of the holidays, that was kind of didn't happen. So I would like to have clarification whether the this meeting was advertised in the Anderson Valley Advertiser, especially the issue case number UR 2021-0004. Thank you so much.
Chair Purnell, I can respond to those if you would like, those 2 questions.
Please.
Okay, so when we notice a project for hearing, we notice in the paper of general circulation that is the closest to the project area. So in this case, we would have noticed not in the Anderson Valley Advertiser, but instead within the Mendocino Beacon. And yeah, in this case, we advertise in the Mendocino Beacon. I have the proof of publication here in my hands that we did publish it in appropriate time for this hearing. It was actually published, it looks like, on the 23rd of December.
Great, thank you for that clarification. Okay, so do we have anybody else for public expression?
None that we can see at this time, and none that signed up to speak.
Okay. Very good. We have nothing on the consent calendar, so moving on to agenda item 6A, the regular calendar. This is case number UR 2021-0004. The applicant is AT&T Mobility with the agent Epic Wireless. The request is a coastal development permit renewal of a previously modified permit for continuing operations of a telecommunications facility. And with that, I'll turn it over to staff. And do you know if we have the applicant or the agent here today?
Yes, we do. We have the applicant or agent available on the line here.
Okay, wonderful.
Good morning, Mark Kleiser, Planner 2, planner for this project. As indicated, this is a coastal development use permit renewal for continued operation of an existing telecommunications facility, which is concealed below the deck of an existing residence. The residence is the primary residence of the homeowner, M. King.
Did we lose you, Mark?
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, possibly yes. I'm trying to reach out to them right now to see if there's some technical difficulties.
Thank you.
It doesn't look like their phone is muted.
Yes, Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, I see that as well, and I think they're trying to reconnect right now. Let's see if that works, and if not, maybe we'll take a break.
Thanks for being our lifeline.
It's been interesting being like control room operator sometimes.
All right, can you guys hear us again?
Hi, I'm meeting now.
Welcome back.
Download the meeting now app on your phone.
Okay, give us just a moment here. We just had our device got disconnected, so let's see if we can get it here. Oh,
There you go.
yay, okay.
Oh,
So Mark, I'm gonna say, go ahead and start your presentation over.
can you hear me?
We
Yes.
can.
Okay, I'll start from the beginning. Mark Kleiser, Planner 2, planner for this project. As indicated, the applicant is requesting a coastal development use permit renewal for a continued operation of an existing telecommunications facility, which is concealed below the deck of an existing residence. This is the primary residence of the homeowner. The host parcel is approximately 1.8 acres and has a general plan and zoning designation of rural residential. Mendocino County Code Section 20.376.015 allows for utilities such as wireless facilities to operate in rural residential districts upon the coastal development use permit. Continued use of the facility conforms with both the general plan and zoning designations. The facility was originally constructed in 2003 under Coastal Development Use Permit number 1-03. In 2004, modifications to the residence and tower were approved, including a new stealth covering for the antenna and a new cooling unit for the equipment. In 2010, further modifications were approved, which included replacement of 3 antennas and a new equipment cabinet within the garage. And in 2020, additional modifications were approved, which included replacement of 1 antenna and installation of additional ancillary equipment. Staff visited the site on October 14th, 2021, and found the tower and facilities to be well maintained. The property is situated on a bluff top approximately 1 mile south of the town of Mendocino. It is bordered to the east by State Highway 1 and to the north and south by residential parcels. The nearest residence is approximately 480 feet south of the facility. The project site is located in a highly scenic area, but because of the design of the facility, this will not affect scenic views, and the project is consistent with the visual resource policies and regulations within the coastal zone. The site is not located in an environmentally sensitive habitat. Additionally, no new development is proposed that would disturb the area. And as no new development or ground disturbance is being proposed, staff finds the project will not impose any structural loads on the ground or alter drainage patterns that might exacerbate erosion, seismic, geological, or natural forces present in the area. The subject parcel is located in a very high fire hazard zone, and the project was referred to the Mendocino Fire Protection District, and no response was received. Project is consistent with both rural residential general plan and zoning designation and allows for wireless communications facilities. And the project continues to support the county's planning principle item 2-2B, which promotes telecommunications and information technology to all areas of the county. Staff evaluated the project for consistency with the county's wireless communication facilities guidelines and found that it, with the recommended conditions of approval, it is in conformance. Additionally, it complies with the FCC limits of radio frequency exposure standards. As the project utilizes an existing residence and no changes are proposed, it is categorically exempt, and staff recommends approval of the project with the conditions. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions from commissioners?
I have no questions. I had no idea there was a cell phone tower under the geodesic dome. Kind of cool.
Okay, seeing no other questions, I just had one. It's just a clarifying question. In the pictures of the geodome, we do see a short antenna of some sort. Is that under a different use permit, perhaps one of the ones listed under related applications?
That antenna is no longer on site. That photograph is old, and currently that feature is no longer there.
Okay, good to know. Other questions for staff? Okay, let's move on to the applicant.
Catherine Williams.
There we go, the second from the bottom.
Right here?
Mhm.
All right, we've brought the agent over, Catherine Leal. And Catherine, please just unmute when you're ready and state your name for the record.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Catherine Leal. I'm with Epic Wireless. We're working on the behalf of AT&T Mobility. I just wanted to say thank you all for having us. We appreciate you hosting this to review the existing facility. We are proposing no changes to the facility, and it's been serving the community for several years, providing needed service. And we ask that you extend your approval to continue that service to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from any commissioners for the applicant? None? Okay. I just had one, which is not really about this application. It's more a question of curiosity, because I'm used to, with these telecommunications facilities, them being tall and all being about, trying to get above tree lines and tops of mountaintops. And this one is unique in that it's hidden under a deck. Can you just explain to us the functionality of that one?
Yes, actually, I'm going to ask, I have my coworker here, Andrew Lisa. He works closely with me, and he has a little bit more background information, and he can allude to how the unique facility services the community.
Thanks, Catherine. Good morning, Chair. My name's Andrew Lisa with Epic Wireless. That's a great question, and that's correct. Typically, cell facilities are located at a higher elevation. The greater elevation the antennas are at typically translates to a greater service footprint. So when antennas, the center line of an antenna is further up from the ground level, it can propagate its signal further. Of course, in this very scenic area along Highway 1 and the coast, the goal was to provide the much needed service while also maintaining the integrity of the visual coastline. And I think AT&T was successful at doing that with finding this very unique site location. But you're correct, typically facilities are a little bit more macro in their size and scope, but that does directly translate to more improved service for the community.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, last chance, commissioners, to ask any questions of the applicant.
I have one question.
Yes.
Since it is under, how big of a range does that cover? Since it's a lower facility, how big of a range would you say it covers, gives cell service?
Yeah, Vice Chair, I don't have that specific information, but typically, approximately a quarter to an eighth of a mile in either direction of the antennas. So, in this case, it's a bit unique in that we're also looking to shoot out into the coast to allow for some of the service to benefit Coast Guard and some other vessels, and then also Highway 1. So, relatively limited footprint, but still very critical infrastructure here, especially with how it serves the Coast Guard.
Okay, any other questions?
Chair Purnell, I don't have a question, but I just want to call the attention to two minor corrections to be made in the resolution for the Planning Commission. So this is on page 4 of the resolution, which is the second to last page in your packet. And it just is simply correcting the date at the top of Exhibit A to reflect today's date, January 6th, 2022. And then additionally, in condition of approval 2 of the permit, revising the expiration date to reflect a 10-year period from today. So that would be an expiration of January 6th, 2032. And my apologies, we did not catch that before our publication. So.
Thank you, Julia. Okay, public hearing. Do we have anybody who would wish to speak on this issue?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. Let me just go ahead and read what I'm supposed to read about this. This is the point where we will address any telecommenters that have submitted their form and are waiting on the line. The clerk will read the list in order and call the next speaker. When called to speak, please state your name for the record. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Speakers are asked to please address their comments to the meeting chair and to refrain from using profanity or engaging in conversation with members of the audience or staff.
Okay, great. We're going to go ahead and bring over Anna Marie Weibel, who has signed up to speak. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to have the 3-minute timer. And Anna Marie, just state your name for the record and I'll start your time once you begin speaking. Thank you.
Anna Marie Weibel, good morning. This telecommunication facility at the intersection of Highway 1 and Comte-Ukiah Road is next to another telecommunication that was placed in a tower of the Stanford Inn, which is next to another proposal that you approved on December 17th, 2020, for a property up Comte-Ukiah Road, just 1.4 miles east of that intersection. The point was made that we need these services that are critical As you know, we have now a bunch of new technology, so new that it was not even talked about in the county guidelines for the development of wireless communication facilities, which were adopted in 2015. And I ask you, the commission, since 2019 to rewrite that because it's not applicable anymore. Also, Mendocino County has the precautionary principle that doesn't seem to be looked at. So each of these applications is determined to be categorically exempt for environmental review, regardless of the fact that we now have 441,449 low Earth orbit satellites that are operating, approved, and proposed. These are brightening the night sky, which has a big influence. It's also the world's largest garbage pits. It has effects on ozone, earthquakes, and thunderstorms. And it changes, it alters the Earth's electromagnetic environment. So I will be glad to provide this information to you. I hope you got my comments that are not listed online yet. I also want to bring to your attention that in August of 21, the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit ruled in the historic case EHT et al. Versus the Federal Communication Commission that the December 2019 decision by the FCC to retain its 1996 safety limits for human exposure to wireless radiation is arbitrary, capricious, and abuse of discretion and not in accordance with the law. Therefore, it is very important that you rewrite these guidelines. And it's not just because you can't see it and it's hidden under the deck, doesn't mean that it doesn't have a serious effect, health effect on people, which can cause cancer, DNA damage, damage to reproductive organs, brain damage, and much more. So we have more and more people who are electromagnetic hypersensitivity issues.
Thank you. And do we have anybody else who wishes to speak under public comment this morning?
No, I do not have any hands showing.
Okay. So at this point, we will close the public hearing and bring the item back before the commission. Okay, and I'm just going to call on commissioners one by one. Commissioner Wiedemann, do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, what my one question is to staff. The speaker mentioned updating our our plan as far as bringing it to the current knowledge technically and scientifically about cell towers, and do we have something scheduled for that in the sense of whether it's our zoning ordinance changes or revisions to the general plan?
Sure, I can address that. Julia Krog, Assistant Director. So as part of the update to the zoning code, there will be amendments made to the Towers and Antennas chapter as it relates to compliance with current FCC guidance, as well as current sort of exemptions that have been provided by the federal government as well for cell towers and any other requirements. We're going to really bring it up to compliance with current laws. But I believe the speaker was also discussing the wireless guidelines, which is a separate document that is not part of the zoning code. As it is right now, we have not initiated an update to those documents, and that is something that would need to be put on a work plan for the department. I am unsure. I can't necessarily commit today about when we would possibly be considering that, but I'll discuss that with the director and see at what point we could possibly be considering updates and revisions to our wireless guidelines.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jones? Any items for discussion?
Yeah, I have no comments. I do know that there was new federal law that was passed in 2018 regarding wireless facilities that essentially really limits what local governments can do. And I suspect that probably our use permit requirement is no longer going to fly. But I'm sure you'll look into that.
Yes, I can just speak to that. There were some pretty significant changes and also streamlined permitting processes. So it really puts the pressure on the local governments to have to process permits in a timely manner so that they do not become deemed approved. And that way we do have an opportunity to be able to add conditions that may be appropriate to reduce any potential impact.
Commissioner Pollan?
No questions at this time.
And I have none either, so I think we are ready for a motion on this.
All right, I'll be brave. I move that we adopt resolution. Sorry, I'm trying to find the number. Oh, look, it doesn't have a resolution. Of adopt the use permit 2021004 Charles Leclerc 3 and Pam King regarding the wireless telecommunications facility.
And
I'll second.
And if I may just inquire if that would also include the revisions to Exhibit A on the date and Condition 2 with the date.
I'll modify my motion to include the changes in the dates as requested by staff.
Thank you.
Second? I didn't hear this.
Oh, that was Paul.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Pollan,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiedemann,
Yes.
Chair Purnell.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
All right, moving on to agenda item 6B, which is a presentation on the Ukiah Valley Groundwater Sustainability Plan by Larry Walker and Associates.
All right, great. We do have on the line today, oh, thank you, Amber, for popping up on the screen. We have Amber Fiset from our County Department of Transportation here available on the line, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to her to introduce the consultant.
Good morning, Commissioners. Amber Fiset, Deputy Director of Transportation. Sorry, we only had one Zoom link, so we also have Laura Foglia from Larry Walker and Associates on the line, but she's using my link, so she's showing up with my name. Laura, you may be able to change your name.
Sorry, Amber, I didn't notice. No, it's fine. And I will be mostly in the background, so that's fine.
So we have been working for the past almost, I think, 4 years now to develop the groundwater sustainability plan for the Ukiah Valley Basin. And we fortunately just were able to adopt it on December 15th. And we'll soon be submitting it to Department of Water Resources and then starting the implementation phase. So we actually, Laura, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, but Amir will take care of the presentation anyway.
I don't see him here.
He should.
Oh, here we go. I see them in the waiting room. So give just one moment. I'm going to go ahead and promote Amir.
Okay, thank you.
There he is.
Oh.
So we have Laura and Amir here today who have worked feverishly over the past 4 years to get this done, along with they were our technical team, and we've also had a technical advisory committee from the member agencies of the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, which is made up of Russian River Flood Control, Upper Russian River Watershed, IRWA, whatever they stand for, Watershed Association, I think, or water agencies, maybe that's it, water agencies, City of Ukiah and County of Mendocino. And Amir has a presentation prepared that I think he can share. So I will pass it over to him to give his presentation, and then we can take follow-up questions afterwards.
Thank you, Amber. This is Amir Mani from Larry Walker Associates, and thank you for having us to do this presentation. Like Amber said, we worked on this starting in 2018, so it's been 3 to 4 years now. Laura, as you saw her, is the project manager, and we worked with a big group. And let me just share the screen first. I think that might be best. To accomplish this, and we are basically in the final stage of submitting the plan this month. We worked with the county staff, Department of Transportation, Amber, Michael, and others. Technical committee that I'm going to go through, the board of the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, and also our sub-consultants, GEI and SCI and UC Davis. I try to summarize. It has been a very big technical effort, so I can't go into a lot of details, but I try to summarize and be brief, and then we are available for any questions to go further in any of the topics that you're interested in. So basically, just on administration level, the Groundwater Sustainability Agency for the Ukiah Valley Basin, as Amber mentioned, comprises of these 6 entities or 6 members, basically. So County of Mendocino, City of Ukiah, the Russian River Flood Control District, Upper Russian River Water Agency, which is a combination of smaller water agencies in the basin, an agricultural representative, and a tribal representative that sit on the board of the agency. Currently, these are the members that represent those entities. So Glenn McGordy from the county, Douglas of Crane, the City of Ukiah, Alfred White from the Flood Control District, Ross LaRue from the URBA, Zachary Robinson as an agri representative, and Eddie Navarez as a tribal representative. So the board, or the GSA, as we call it, the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, is the main entity that handles the GSP and is responsible to comply with the regulation, which is the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, SGMA, as we call it. And then the GSA formed a technical advisory committee that we work directly with to develop the plan. And it does include more entities and also the ones that are in the GSA. So the County of Mendocino, City of Ukiah, URBA, the Flood Control District, a tribal representative, agricultural representative, and also members from Sonoma Water, the Mendocino County Resource Conservation District, and California Land Stewardship Institute. We are the technical team, as I mentioned, and we had on occasions assembled working groups that are smaller technical groups that assisted us for different topics to develop policies and technical materials for the plan. I said I just went through this, so I don't think it's necessary. But basically, these were the 4 main groups that were involved in developing the plan, and will be involved in the next 20 years to implement the plan. Just a bit of background on the regulation and how things started. So the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, as is commonly referred to as SGMA, became a law in January 2015. And then basically, Department of Water Resources went through the groundwater basins in the state and assigned them priorities based on a various set of factors. And the ones that came out as medium, high, or critical were the ones that were subjected to the SGMA, and they had to develop a groundwater sustainability plan that is commonly referred to as GSPs. Now, the critical basins, the ones that were overdrafted, were supposed to develop these plans by January 2020, and they already submitted their plans and they're implementing them. The basins that are considered medium or high priority are the ones that are supposed to submit their plans by the end of January 2022, basically this month. The Ukiah Valley Groundwater Basin is a medium priority, and therefore it's subject to SGMA, and we are submitting the plan by the end of this month. A major theme in Sigma that I need to point out, and you will see in the next slides too, is that Sigma emphasizes the local control of the groundwater resources. And that's why the whole framework of Groundwater Sustainability Agency is put in. So there are avenues that the state would come in if the plans fail. But basically, the whole point of Sigma is to move the control of the groundwater basin to the local entities. So the timeline of the Sigma, basically relative to when the plan is submitted, either 2020 or 2022 for our case, it starts from the submission, basically, which is 2022 now. We adopt the plan, it goes to Department of Water Resources. Department has 2 years to approve the plan or decide on the plan. And then as soon as the plan is submitted by the end of January 2022, implementation of the plan begins. Each 5 year, the plan has interim goals that you have to reach. And also these are the opportunities for the plan to be updated or amended. And then each year the plan needs to submit, or the GSA needs to submit an annual report. And then after 20 years, basically in 2042 for the Ukiah Valley Groundwater Basin, we're supposed to reach a sustainability, or the basin should be basically operating in a sustainable condition as defined in the plan. So the technical process that we went through the past 3 years to get to this point and complete the plan almost follows the chapters in the GSP, or the Groundwater Sustainability Plan. So we have 5 major chapters in the plan that starts with an introduction, which is more administration that I just went through. And then is plan area and basin setting, which is the establishing the historical condition of the basin, how it has been operated and what's the current condition of it. And then setting sustainable management criteria that I will go through next, and then define projects and management actions that will help sustainably manage the groundwater basin in the next 20 years and after. And chapter 5 is plan implementation, which goes into details of how what we planned in the first 4 chapters would be carried out in the next 20 years. So these are the words that would come out of the GSP or the Sigma law, or in general, groundwater sustainable management of the groundwater basins, and will be repeated. So it's like a new language that we kind of got used to in the past 3 or 4 years. But basically, the sustainable management criteria relates to 6 conditions that the regulation of Sigma and Department of Water Resources consider for agencies to address. So the first one is lowering of groundwater levels. Second one is reduction in storage of the groundwater basin. The third one is seawater intrusion. Fourth, degraded water quality of the basin, land subsidence, and surface water depletion. So these are the 6 major indicators that we need to address in the plan and make sure that the basin is sustainably operated and managed with regards to these 6 indicators. In our basin, in Ukiah Valley Groundwater Basin, since it's not a coastal basin, seawater intrusion doesn't apply. So we are dealing with 5. And although we address land subsidence in the plan, historically this hasn't been a problem and is not projected to be a problem in the next 20 years. So we are dealing mostly with 4 indicators or sustainable management criteria for this plan. After addressing and making policy regarding this, then monitoring networks are developed to measure and track how you're doing with respect to these. And I'm going to go through that too. So what are these sustainable management criteria? So as we presented, and I think we came up with this in the past 2-3 years. So they are like thermometers in terms of health of the body. So if you consider the basin as like a human body, we have 6 thermometers to measure and track how healthy is the basin, how sustainable it is. In most cases, except for degraded water quality, we have a minimum and a maximum, or a measurable objective, basically, that we want to reach into. So the minimum threshold is what we consider the lowest point that we can go to without threatening the health of the basin. And that's a red line in those thermometers. And the measurable objective is a range normally, or a cutoff, that we think the basin would be sustainable if we are around or on top of that. And we're operating in that range. And we can have interim milestones between the minimum threshold, the red line, and the measurable objective, the green line, that kind of shows us the path towards achieving our sustainability. So this is a graph of groundwater elevations. So basically the depth to the water at each well that we look into, that's our measurement. And if it's lower than some amount that we technically process and analyze, it would be an undesirable result. So undesirable result is a term that is used in planning for Sigma a lot, and is basically our measure of sustainability. If you go into a range that is considered as undesirable result, and that is defined by the agency itself, then the basin is not being managed sustainably. So we try to avoid that red area by assigning these sustainable management criteria and doing projects and management actions. So as you see, we have those white range, a bit more than the trigger, basically. That is the flexible area that the agency can operate within with regards to the basin. And then there is a green range, which is our measurable objective and above, that is considered sustainable. So what the agency is trying to do is to avoid going to the red area, keep the basin in the white and green area, and basically in 20 years, we should be always in the green area. So how do we do that? After setting the policies, basically the sustainable management criteria for each of those 4 major criteria in our basin, we need to develop monitoring networks for each of them that tracks how we're progressing towards the goal that we set, or towards those numbers that we set, the measurable objectives. So as an example, for groundwater elevation monitoring network, you can see the 2 plots that we have of the basin. We assign wells in the basin, and then we monitor them on specific frequencies, and we measure the depth to the water in those wells, and then we compare them to the sustainable management criteria that we set for each of those wells. Now we can have representative monitoring wells that basically measure for sustainable management criteria. That is a handful of these wells that you see on the plots. We go through that, we compare them, and then we progress towards the goal, and we have the measurable objective for all those wells that we need to hit in 20 years. So we'll see how we're doing, and we assess the conditions of the basin, and basically we are judged, that the agency is judged based on these monitoring and how it progresses by the Department of Water Resources and the State Water Board. So the monitoring network helps us track our progress, and also basically shows that we are doing the sustainable management that we are supposed to do. On the technical side of things, before setting all those sustainable management criteria and even coming up with the monitoring network, what we needed to do was to develop a model. We call it integrated hydrological model because it has a groundwater part and it has a surface water part, and it's integrated and models the whole water system together. Just to abbreviate it, we call it UVIHM, which is basically Ukiah Valley Integrated Hydrological Model. This took about 2 years for us, a bit more than 2 years for us to develop. And it includes a lot of the data that the county and the cities and the water agencies have, and basically helps us to develop an understanding of the conditions of the basin, historically and current. It also helps us project the future using by making some assumptions and extending the model to the future in the next 20 years or by the end of the century in terms of climate change. And those projections help us set better management criteria, help the agency make better management decisions and policy decisions regarding the plan. The model can also be used to assess the impacts of climate change, the possible changes to the Potter Valley project, or any other changes to land use, to the population, or the demand scenarios that goes on in the basin and the city and the county. As you can see, also one of the data sources that we put into the model is the land use, based on the land use map in 2010 that the Mendocino County has, but also the soil map, the stream flow gauges that we have, the groundwater elevations that we monitor by the county in the past 10 years. All of that are basically input data to the model. What we got out of the model is basically a representation of the conditions of the basin. And that includes the groundwater elevations in any point of the basin that you want to see. It's a stream flow in the rivers at any point that you want to see. Its flows and water budget that we use to assess the conditions of the basin or project the conditions of the basin in the next 20 years. So this, what I'm showing here is just 3 plots of stream flow gauges that USGS maintains in the basin. One near the Mendocino County, the Lake Mendocino, one near the Ukiah wastewater treatment plant, and one near Hopland, which is basically drainage of the basin. And the red line shows what the model predicted, and the blue line shows what was measured in those gauges. And this is how we validate our model and how good it represents the flows and what it's supposed to simulate, basically. So in terms of what we came up with the model and the data in hand, in terms of groundwater elevations, which is the most important data to assess for the plan and for assessing the conditions of the basin, basically. There are no historical declining trends in the basin. So when you look at those graphs that I have on the right side of the slide, those shows the groundwater elevation. So you will see some seasonality in fall and spring, but basically the trend line is straight line in the historic timeline. So there is no chronic declining of groundwater elevations, and the basin seems to be healthy in that regard. Basin is not in overdraft because we don't see a decline in the levels. And the only problem that exists is that the data is sporadic and we don't have the amount of data that we need to assess the conditions thoroughly. So one thing to be addressed is the data gaps that exist in the basin. But otherwise, in terms of groundwater elevation, historically the basin has been managed pretty well.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
On that last slide, the black line shows a big decline, the middle slide in 2010. Can you explain what that is?
So is it the second, like the middle graph that you're?
Yeah, the middle graph.
The black one, yes.
Yeah.
So that's practically 2020, 2019, 2020, we went into a drought. It might be a bit of a decline, but so these slides are not that, doesn't represent the newest data that we obtained. So we went into a drought. The basin is, as I'm going to go through, the basin is very responsive to the climate conditions, and it depends on the precipitation mostly, especially the shallower. We have 2 aquifers, as we call them. One is shallow around the river and one is deeper. So the shallow one is basically responsive to climate conditions. So as we went to the drought, levels a bit declined to historical levels, comparable to 2013 and 14 drought. But now in the past 3 to 4 months, they are coming up. So the basin is recovering from that drought.
So that is a specific well point, or it's, I'm just curious what it's actually measuring.
Yes.
You don't have a logo.
Yes. So it shows pretty small, but if you look at the basin, like that corner kind of picture of the basin in the graph, like the colors are showing. So that's a specific well in the southern area of the basin.
Got it.
And that measures elevations in that specific well, yes. But what we consider is looking at these wells in the monitor network, all of them, and try to capture an understanding of the condition of the basin. So if it's just one well that's declining, it might be a local problem or it might be pumping nearby. But if it is like more wells in the same area that are showing a decline, then it will be a management problem.
Thank you for providing that clarity.
So the other thing that is important in terms of groundwater elevations, but shows up as another measure, is basically how wells, domestic agricultural public wells, react to this decline. So wells have a specific depth, and if the groundwater decline goes beyond that depth, the well basically becomes dry and non-operatable. So we did this analysis during the development plan about a year ago or so to just see how the wells would be impacted in the basin if the groundwater levels fall. So our kind of basis was the fall 2016 groundwater levels, basically the fall after the drought has been done in the county. And then if we go to that year, you will see that we have different retirement ages here, which basically means we're considering 31 years or 40 years operatable age of each well. That after that, basically we need a new well. But on both conditions, no matter what the assumption is, a small percentage of the wells would be dry, 2 to 3% basically. And all of them are domestic wells that are shallow wells, about 30 feet deep. And all of them, as you can see, like the red dots in those basin graphs under the tables, they show the wells that are going dry. So all of them basically are in the middle to northern part of the basin in the Redwood Valley area. We did the same analysis just to be a bit more elaborative. We did the same analysis. We went to 10 feet below the 2016 level and 20 feet below the 2016 levels, and those percentages grew. So if you go to 10 feet, basically about 9% of the wells become dry, and that's where we draw the line for those sustainable management criteria. We didn't want to go over that percentage and see more wells become dry. So that's basically how we set those sustainable management criteria that I just explained in the previous slides. In terms of
I have a
groundwater,
question.
sure.
You just said if you go 10 feet below, measure if the water level is 10 feet below the wells you referred to, then that's an issue. And were those the shallow wells?
So yes, but to clarify, so we went 10 feet below all the levels measured in 2016 fall. So basically, it's like the groundwater basin just shifted 10 feet in every spot, and then it's not a problem in terms of any scientific thing. It's just we, as an agency, we decided that we don't want to go beyond more than 5 to 10% dry wells in the basin. So that's where. So we don't want to get to that point basically. And 2016 fall levels are not high groundwater levels. It's just after the drought, so it's already low in terms of historical levels. Not the lowest, but low. And then 10 feet in terms of the Ukiah Valley groundwater basin, 10 feet is not a small range, to be honest, because the aquifer is not that deep. So overall, yes, 10 feet in terms of the plan would be a problem, but what we were talking about is a very rare scenario that everywhere in the basin actually declines about 10 feet.
Thank
Can
you.
I ask a follow-up question on that?
Sure.
So you said at that condition, 10% of the wells basically would run dry. I assume mostly that's probably residential wells. That seems like a pretty drastic situation to me to get that far down. And I'm just wondering, in your model, how did you consider the impacts of climate change and the increased variability in precipitation, especially the increased likelihood that we'll have droughts and that are longer and deeper? And did that shape the thinking at all in terms of setting that 10-foot limit?
Yes. So just to correct myself, so the 10 feet led to 5% and 20 feet led to 10%, and we cut off at 10 feet. But anyway, yes, we did a climate change scenario based on what the Department of Water Resources suggested. And we ran the model simulations. Basically, it led to groundwater declines in the basin the next 30 years, but not very significant. And then there are two reasons for that. First of all, there are a lot of data gaps in the basin, and they translate to our model performance. And we're hoping the model would be improved the next 5 years based on the data that we collect, and we can run another set of climate change simulations that would better provide a projection. And the second thing was the methodology that the department proposed basically doesn't let us to see the change in the precipitation pattern. It led us to see the decline or incline in the precipitation or intensity, but doesn't show the shift in the season that the precipitation happens basically. So we did do that, and we had the results, but how it actually formed the decision making was we showed all those criteria to the agency and to the technical committee. And then what got back was that, okay, we don't want to go below this level because of multiple factors. And that would be an undesirable result for us. And then we set minimum thresholds based on that. So not directly, but a combination of all these factors basically shaped the decision-making criteria of the agency.
Okay. And it sounds like maybe in the future, you might have better models given fewer data gaps and more flexibility from the state.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted. That's exactly what we're doing. So in the next 5 years, we're collecting data. In the plan, we have that the model would be improved. And we also have a well inventory project and management action that, because the data that we have regarding the wells are not also perfect. So we need a better data about the wells that exist, their depth, and then we can redo this analysis based on better results and see what would actually happen based on the newer conditions of the basin. But yes, the goal of the plan is to maintain the sustainability that the basin had historically, but also improve on the data so the management can be improved in the future.
Thanks so much for that clarification. Super helpful.
Oh, you're welcome. So the next indicator after groundwater elevations was groundwater quality. So overall, based on we went over all the basically all the groundwater quality data that was publicly available and we could obtain from the member agencies or entities that were willing to share data. Basically, the basin in terms of groundwater quality is in a very good condition. The groundwater quality does not have any specific problems in the basin. On some areas of the basin, in the very deeper aquifer, there are some naturally occurring problems regarding boron, but there are not so many wells that supply water from those depths and in those areas. So overall, there is no groundwater quality problems currently in the basin that needs to be addressed. So the goal of the plan is to maintain this groundwater quality for the future. We said, so these are the 5 constituents that the agency decided to focus on based on our analysis. So boron, iron, manganese, nitrate, and specific conductance. Boron, manganese, and iron, they had historical exceedances of their water quality objective due to natural conditions, basically. So that's why they're on the list. And nitrate and specific conductance are indicators showing human influence on salts and nutrients. So that's why they're on the list too. All these 5 constituents will be monitored by the agency or member agencies through other programs for the next 20 years. And we have minimum thresholds that are set at the regulatory threshold, as you can see on the table for each of these constituents. And we have triggers set up. So if the triggers hit for any reason in any local conditions, the GSA would communicate with the regional board and state board for further action. But as of now, basin is in a healthy condition regarding groundwater quality. The third indicator, and basically the major driver of the plan for the Ukiah Valley Basin, is the depletion of interconnected surface waters. So that was the main indicator that we try to resolve within the basin. So this is a complicated indicator, to be honest. So what it means is basically when the groundwater elevation falls due to pumping, so if the pumping increases and the groundwater elevation declines in the basin, in the areas that are close to the river and can impact the streams and rivers, it leads to a disconnection between the groundwater basin or the aquifers and the stream. And that likely disconnection or the lowering of the groundwater levels tends to impact the river flow in a way that the flow actually discharges more than historically it would the groundwater aquifer. And then on a critical season or in critical conditions, basically it leads to drying up the rivers. And that has happened historically a couple of times in the basin because of frost protection in 2006 and 2008, as I understood. So that was one of the issues that we really wanted to address with the model and with monitoring that we put in the plan. So what we have now is basically we set up new monitoring wells along the river that are coupled with the stream flow gauges. And these monitoring wells are measured continuously with devices in them that provide us with a 15-minute interval data on groundwater elevation. And how we're going to use that is we're going to relate that to the surface water flow in the river that we get from those stream flow gauges. And we can relate those and come up with a condition of the depletion of interconnected surface water. 2 things to mention here that are important is first, not all the depletion of the interconnected surface waters are relevant to the GSA. Basically, the river can become dry, as you know, if the PVP changes and we don't have enough releases from the Mendocino Lake. That's not something that the Groundwater Sustainability Agency needs to address. What the Groundwater Sustainability Agency needs to address is any depletion that is caused by an unsustainable amount of pumping. So if the groundwater pumping actually is the cause of that depletion, is something that the agency needs to address. And the second thing is that because of the data gaps that we just mentioned, it was very difficult to address this right now. So what we did was we tried to maintain our historical conditions. So for the next 5 years, we related this to the groundwater elevation. So as long as the historical groundwater elevations are preserved and we don't go to minimum threshold, we assume that the rivers would still be fine. And then after 5 years, with an improved model and improved data, as I mentioned, through those wells, we're going to revise the sustainable management criteria that we set for this indicator, because we do need more data to be accurate and set a good policy for this indicator.
Mayor, can I ask a question about this one?
Sure.
I know that there's an influence between surface water and groundwater pumping, but there's also sort of in reverse. I know that currently for the city of Ukiah's wells, they're not listed, they're not deemed as pumping underflow from the Russian River, but is there any consideration in your model about if the state changes that determination and if flows from the Russian River decrease because of reduced flows from the Potter Valley project?
So there are two things there. So the underflow wells has been a huge discussion during our developing the plan. In terms of the model, there is no distinction for the model in terms of underflow or groundwater, because when we put the well, if it actually impacts the river because of the pumping, model would simulate that. So that distinction is more policy than technical in terms of the model. So we just put in the wells, and if the well is close to the river and it's in shallow depth and it directly impacts the river, that would show up in the model, even if it's not an underflow distinction under the state board. But the city of Ukiah wells, there are two types of them, as you said. Some of them are already put as underflow wells. Some of them are pretty deep in the second aquifer that might not impact the river. So that's for them. For the Potter Valley project, we did run some exploratory scenarios for the GSA to look at when they were deciding on things, and it did show impacts specifically on the river flow. But as I said, the GSA is responsible for depletion due to pumping. Now, if the PVP changes, that criteria becomes a bit conflictory. So in the next 5 years, as we understand, if things change in terms of the PVP, I think we need to run other scenarios to be exact about it. But we did need the model to be a bit improved, to have a better representation. And also the PVP is more complicated than GSA alone. But our scenarios showed that the river flow below the Lake Mendocino would be directly impacted if any of the current scenarios of the PVP are implemented.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have one other question. So I'm not sure if the Potter Valley project is what I've heard about, but what I've heard about is that the Mendocino Reservoir gets filled from water that's pumped by PG&E from Lake Pillsbury, and that they have abandoned that pumping station. Is that the Potter Valley project, or is that something else?
No, conceptually, that's what it is. So there is an east fork that comes to the Lake Mendocino from the Potter Valley project that they use two reservoirs and basically divert some of the water from the PG&E divert some of the water into that east fork. Some of it goes to an irrigation district and the rest comes and is stored in the Lake Mendocino. Now, the licensing has been a discussion in the past years. As it's being operated right now is as it was historically, but I understand it's going to change. So there are a couple of scenarios that's been discussed, and the reason is PG&E doesn't want to continue the license, so they withdrew. But I'm not the best person to actually, respond to that. I think Sonoma Water and County are pretty more involved. But the scenarios that we ran were based on the newest possibilities that came out of a working group that we set for the PVP, and basically, two of the scenarios showed that direct impact. One of them was worst case scenario, basically that nothing comes in and that directly impacts the river flow. So it really depends what happens to the PVP, but your understanding is correct. So a lot of the water, especially in the dry season, that Lake Mendocino releases are crucial to the basin. A portion of the water comes from the PVP project into the Lake Mendocino.
Scary
just-
stuff.
Just a quick clarification for you, Commissioner Jones. It's not a pumping, it flows via gravity, which is why there's a hydroelectric plant that is associated with it. And also just to clarify, it currently is not continuing to flow as historically has been operated. PG&E since several months ago has reduced the flows through the project significantly because they don't want to upgrade or they don't want to repair the transformer bank at the hydroelectric plant. So it's currently only operating at about 20% capacity, which is one of the reasons why Lake Mendocino continues to be staying low and likely not fill over the course of this year.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Pollan. And just to clarify, so our model, and I had to say, so our model basically goes up to 2018 as historical portion. So the historical baseline that we set for the conditions of the basin is from 1991 to 2018. So whatever changes happened by the end of 2018 is already included in the model. And then our projection period or future baseline is basically starts from 2018 and goes for 50 years into the future. We ended the model by 2070. So we have a model that projects up to 2070 in the future. And those scenarios basically were run for the next 50 years.
And I do have a question about that, since we know 2021 was a very difficult year with drought to get through, and we saw a lot of dry wells and water issues countywide. Do you, even 2021 is not included in your data or the modeling at this point, do you happen to know how 2021 compared to 2016, which I believe is the low point that you've been utilizing for the modeling?
Yes, so 2021, the reason that, we saw the data, but the reason that it's not included is because we needed to proceed with the plan, and it wasn't really possible to finish the plan. But yes, we saw the data. To be honest, so 2016 was the low point for that specific analysis that I showed you for the wells, but the lowest point of the basin in the model is basically 2013-14, so the last drought. And the reason that's the case is because we don't have any data going back before 2013 from groundwater measurements other than 2-3 wells that the department used to measure starting in 1970. But to answer your question, so overall, it changes well to well, to be honest, but overall 2020 and 2021 compare to the historical drought of 2013 and 14.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, so it will be lower than 2016, just to be clear about that. So this is the water budget. This is one of the main measures that we have to put in the plan in a separate section, and it actually provides a overall picture of how the basin operates. And this is a result of the model, one of the results of the model. And what you see on the right is basically annual budget, and what you see on the left is monthly budgets. The monthly budget in each water year type, and I'm going to go through that. So in terms of annual budget, there are specific terms that are shown in different colors, and what we really want to see is like the orange color is the deep percolation or recharge that happens in the basin based on precipitation. So whatever water comes into the basin and recharges the basin, that's basically our major input. Then we have a stream loss to the groundwaters in brown, and that's also an input to the groundwater basin, basically what the river contributes to the groundwater, recharging through the stream beds. And then we have inflow coming from outside the basin from the upper watershed, from those tributaries that we have. So these are the input to the groundwater. These are the water that we gain in the basin. And what goes out of the basin is through pumping, which shows agricultural pumping, the pink color, and also municipal pumping, which shows a kind of a greenish bluish color. And then the red color is what the groundwater contributes to the rivers as base flow. So on an annual scale, as you can see. And that black line that you see is the change in storage. That's a measure that we use to see if the basin is declining in terms of storage. So that's the amount of water that you have in the basin. So the change in the storage is around 0. And that's good news because it shows that the basin is not losing more water that it can gain. And so it's being managed sustainably. On the left side, these are the 5 types of years that are defined by the Department of Water Resources. So we have wet, we have above normal, we have below normal, we have dry and critical. So just to be clear, like critical is something like 2013. Dry is around 2013, like 12 and 14. And then above normal is a year like 2016. We have wet, that was like 2017. And below normal is 2015. So on different years, because the basin is reactive to the climatic conditions, the water budget changes, as you can see. So it matters what year we're in, how we're doing in terms of climate, then how we're going to manage the basin. But overall, as you can see, if you are in a wet year, there are a lot of water, like the last graph on the second row, basically. There's a lot of water going from the groundwater aquifer to the streams as base flows. And in a dry year or in a critical years, it's the reverse. You can see actually brown color in the dry month in the summer. That shows that the basin is gaining water from the river. And that's basically releases from the Lake Mendocino. So it really depends, like the basin is very reactive to what the climatic conditions is. But the good news is normally recharges if you're not in a very huge drought during the precipitation in the winter months. So this is a general overall picture of the plans, groundwater sustainability plans. I just wanted to put in. So the big picture is we have opportunities for supplying the groundwater aquifer, and we have opportunities to lower the demand. Both of them are in equilibrium right now for the Ucayali Valley Basin. But as you know, climate change, population, all of that can change the conditions of the basin in the future. And these are basically the two sides of the balance that we can change to get back to the sustainability. We can increase the supply, or we can lower the demand, or we can do both. So basically the projects and management actions that we put in the plan do either one or both to turn back the basin if it falls into undesirable conditions. So the projects and management actions that we put in, so the reason that we put them in is we're going to implement them in the next 20 years, and they're going to be there to maintain the sustainability in 50 years after 2042, which is our deadline. And also they have to respond to the changing conditions in the next 20 years. We shouldn't go into undesirable results basically in the next 20 years either. So our projects and management actions, or commonly referred to as PMAs, are categorized into existing projects and management actions. As an example, the recycled water project that was implemented in the end of 2018, that's an existing projects and management actions in the basin. We have proposed and planned projects and management actions, and there are projects that can be evaluated in future. Like you mentioned, like we probably need projects if the PVP actually changes in the next 20 years, in the next 15 years. So we put them in 2 tiers, tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1 is the existing, tier 2 is proposed and planned. And generally they fall into these categories. So we have supply augmentation, working on the supply side of things. We can have recycled water, we can have recharge ponds, we can have off-stream reservoirs, we can reduce the evaporative losses on those storages that the agricultural farms use. And we can do well rehabilitation, which increases the efficiency of pumping. Then we can move to the water conservation, which is on the demand side of the balance. And there are a lot of conservation policies in place in the basin that can be continued. We can move to conjunctive use, which is again on the side of supply augmentation, and we can do recharge projects. And then we have water quality enhancement if it needed, and that's basically protecting our source waters on outer watersheds. As it stands, the existing PMAs are already in place, but the proposed and planned are mostly conceptual in the basin. if the conditions stands to maintain the sustainability, we won't need a major project, but based on how climate change impacts the basin and how the precipitation pattern changes, as we consulted the GSA, we would need to be proactive in terms of putting projects in to avoid undesirable conditions in the future. And that was basically my presentation. I can't go into details in any of the topics that you're interested in. This is just an overview of the plan. And just to let you know that the entire plan is on the county's website. It's a huge document, but there's an executive summary that provides a good detail about the entire plan that you can read. Thank you again for having us.
Thank you, Amir. That was a great presentation and gave us a good overview. I'm curious if the groundwater sustainability plan identifies with those tier 2 project management actions, which agencies might be responsible for implementation, or will that fall in a different plan elsewhere?
So in the chapter 4 of the GSP, we do have those projects called out. In most of them, because they are basically in the conceptual stage, we don't specifically call out an agency to do it, but there are some projects that we propose that either GSA or one of the member agencies would take the lead on those projects. Like, for example, recycled water project expansion would be City of Bucharest. So those are called out, but not all of them. And the reason is, at this stage, basically what the department expected us and what the agency decided to do was to put in all the projects and management actions that would probably be necessary in the future or would be good to have as an option. And as the funding becomes necessary, becomes available, or the project becomes necessary, the GSA would actually move to design and more details, and then those lead agencies would be, determined. But at this stage, most of the projects are conceptual, but they are sometimes called out in chapter 4.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones?
So I super enjoyed your presentation, very informative. Water's always been kind of an interest of mine. And I guess I have a question. Maybe it's a hypothetical question. I think it's incredibly useful for the inland area of Mendocino County. In the coastal area of Mendocino County, on the other side of the hill, if you will, I suspect that we have many little water basins because of the way the mountains and the little streams finger out. And we have kind of a difficult situation as a planning commission in that every development project has to have its own independent hydrological study done, which can get pricey. And I'm wondering, is that the best approach, or is there an approach the county could use where we actually are looking at watersheds in Mendocino County and trying to understand them as wholes? I mean, on the coast, the watersheds that we have on the coast, and get studies done for our whole little watershed so that each individual development project doesn't have to do its own hydrological study. I don't know if you have the expertise to comment on that, but I'd just be curious.
I could speak to that a little bit. We're actually currently working on a grant application for a sort of a drought response grant. That under that grant one of the activities is to do data collection countywide. So that I don't know if it would be as in-depth as what we did here in the Ukiah Basin, but it would allow us, we understand that there are data gaps countywide, and it would include drilling monitoring wells and doing some long-term monitoring in different basins around the county. Now, whether or not studies would be required for individual projects, I don't know that would eliminate the need for that, but it would definitely help us to understand the groundwater, the health of the groundwater across the county. So we're hoping that we are awarded that and able to move forward.
Yeah,
I'll just add that there's a coastal groundwater study from 1982 that was done, and I don't believe that that's been updated holistically. And then we also have the coastal development groundwater development guidelines that I believe were adopted in 1989. Those also have not received a holistic update since I think their initial adoption.
So is it your sense that maybe these are projects in terms of updating that the county would undertake at some point?
It's possible, you know, there's an effort underway right now to reestablish a sort of an independent, more robust water agency. It's been shrunk down over the years to this very basic water agency that just sort of meets the regulatory requirements put on us by the state. And there at this point are no, you know, resources dedicated to anything like that. But the idea behind the redevelopment of a water agency is to be able to take on projects like that.
That'd be awesome. Very, I think we all agree, very necessary at this point.
We have a consultant who has just started working on, they're going to be doing a water agency strategic plan, looking at, you know, what the focus should be of the water agency going forward and what resources are needed in order to sort of fulfill that mission. So that'll be coming in the next few months. And I think that it would be, you know, they're going to develop a team to do the strategic planning. And I do think that to have at least one representative for the Planning Commission on that would be very helpful.
And I'm sure you'll get one. Cool. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for your work. Really interesting and very, very important for our community.
Commissioners Pollen or Wiedemann, did you have any comments or questions? No. Okay, and Commissioner Wiedemann is off my screen, so.
Here, I do. I actually have a question for Amber. Do you see me now?
I see.
Okay.
I see you.
Okay, all right. Friends of Navarro Watershed, are you in touch with their work or and them?
No, I'm not familiar
Because
with
that particular watershed could really use some, I think, help in the sense of restorative help. And it's an important watershed, obviously, because of all the agriculture in the 5th District there, and especially Anderson Valley. Okay, thank you. I would recommend that connection happening.
I would definitely think that if we go forward with this data collection effort, that Anderson Valley and the Navarro watershed will be the focus of one of the efforts.
Thank you.
And they're currently, Anderson Valley is actually one of the basins that's subject to CASGEM. So there currently is some groundwater elevation data being collected in Anderson Valley that's available online on the CASGEM site.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay, well, let's see if we have anybody from the public that would like to comment on this item.
We actually have nobody in the attendees area, so I'm going to take that as no public comment.
Okay, no public comment on this issue. So we can wrap this up just with a big thank you to Amir and to the whole team at Larry Walker and Associates, and also Amber to your work on these water issues as well. And to staff for getting them to us for this wonderful and educational presentation.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 7, matters from staff.
Thank you. I just only wanted to note that the error that was identified by the speaker under public expression for the error in the resolution, that's just a Scrivener's error, and that's something that we will correct to reflect the appropriate dates for it. Staff has no concerns with making those changes, but I just wanted to make sure I commented on that to the commission. And other than that, I have no additional items, but of course I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Julia. Okay, any matters from the commission? Commissioner Jones.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give you an update on the vacation rental thing. Dan and I have both been doing research. We had tried to schedule a couple meetings, but then the holidays got crazy. But we are going to meet after this call. I've drafted a draft resolution that she has not had a chance to look at, so she'll take a look at that. And then I also wanted to let you know that I worked with the Housing Action Team and Dan Jurdy to start pulling together some policy ideas for consideration by the Board of Supervisors with regards to an actual ordinance that would address vacation rentals throughout Mendocino County. So that's just an update. I wanted to keep you guys appraised of what we're doing.
Thank you. Any other matters from the commission? Seeing none, I do believe we're moving on to agenda item 9, approval of minutes, beginning with the minutes from November 18th, 2021. Are there any changes needing to be made, or otherwise I think we're ready for a motion?
I make a motion to adopt the minutes of November 18th, 2021 as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Commissioner Pollan,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiedemann,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Chair Pennell.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And now the meeting action minutes from December 2nd, 2021.
I move that we adopt the minutes from December 2nd, 2021.
I'll second.
Commissioner Pollan,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiedemann,
I will adopt them, but there is something I wanted to mention, and on 8A, commission action, page 2, it's basically about the ad hoc committee and short-term rentals. And I just want to read how I interpreted that going forward. And the focus would be a historic interpretation of the zoning ordinance, past staff memos, and I would get rid of, and I would say, and any information provided by staff and any other jurisdiction in the current memorandum to the commission. And the reason is that opens it to do the research that I feel like the ad hoc committee and the commission needs to do a broader, more updated comparison to taking in what other jurisdictions are doing around vacation rentals. We're not the only county having to deal with these changes and updates. So I'd like to change that before I approve that minutes. And Chair, I'm not sure how to go about that now.
I think we may have two issues here. One is that there was a certain something already discussed at a previous meeting on this issue. And we have the current language before us, presumably reflecting what was discussed at that time. And then it's possible that there may also be a modification to the focus of that ad hoc, which I think we would need to handle separately. And I just want to defer to Deputy County Counsel on this one.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, I think it's up to if the commission members believe that restatement as provided by Vice Chair Wiedemann of the intention of the action is accurate, we can either take action today or we can go back to staff and look at the video to confirm wording of it from that point, just to make sure and bring these back to the next meeting. If there is, I'm not sure how much broader that is, and I have to go back to that meeting to see about this discussion of, is there more encapsulated from that discussion at the last when the ad hoc was created or not? So I guess the question is, the commission believes that's an accurate restatement, or if they would like staff to review the video and then bring this back to the next meeting.
Thank you for that. So Commissioner Wiedemann, I'm going to ask you to share with us what wording you feel may have been more accurate from that meeting.
I think in the last line, starting with there actually is only one sentence, but in the printed last version where it says past staff memos, and instead of all of the information, any information provided by staff and other jurisdictions for the current memorandum. That gives it more scope of what I felt like I understood.
So I'd like to add two thoughts here. When we talked about forming the ad hoc committee, my recollection was that the first task was to focus on the interpretation of the existing zoning ordinance, which is a normal thing that planning commissioners do. And then the second piece was recognizing the Board of Supervisors is considering an ordinance. And so I feel like the two things that Diana and I can help with and that we talked about at the last meeting were those two tasks. And the way this is written right now is it's very limited. So I think if we just reworded it overall and just said, you know, Chair Purnell appointed Vice Chair Wiederman and Commissioner Jones to an ad hoc committee related to short-term rentals to review and provide a recommendation to the Planning Commission regarding the interpretation of current zoning code and to work with Board of Supervisors to develop a new ordinance. That would really encapsulate it instead of shoehorning it into this little teeny thing.
Well, that sounds accurate to me based on my recollection of the conversation.
Right.
And Commissioner Wiedemann, I'm wondering how you're feeling about that. And then I do see that Julia wants to chime in as well.
I think that covers really what I'm trying to say. It's just a different direction of language. I'm fine with that.
And my suggestion would just be, what we could do is go back and re-review the video, get the verbatim language, and then go ahead and bring that back at a subsequent meeting for the commission to adopt, if that would be helpful.
Fine.
Okay, so in that case, we probably shouldn't adopt these minutes now.
No.
Do we need some kind of motion to continue these, or how do we handle that with minutes that we're not ready to adopt?
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Godrowski, I think for now we would assume we're going to assume there's no action taken by the commission. We wouldn't have to continue them. They'll be renoticed on the next agenda when that comes back before the commission.
Perfect.
So direction given to staff, I think.
Great. And staff, you feel you have adequate direction on that?
Yes, we do. We'll just go back and unless there were any comments on any other portion of those minutes, we'll really just look at the ad hoc item and make sure that we have that language correct in there.
Great, thank you. And so important for the ad hoc members to be clear on what their task is. So thank you for raising that. Okay, now we have the meeting action minutes from December 16th, 2021. Not a lot of content here.
Yeah, I'll move that we adopt the minutes of September 16th, 2021.
I'll second that motion.
Commissioner Pollan,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiedemann,
Yes.
Chair Purnell.
Yes,
Motion passes.
wonderful. And our final agenda item is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move
So
to
moved.
adjourn.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Happy 22.
Bye.